Here we go.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hang on. It's really low, but that might be my volume on my end. Let me check.
Yeah, I'm on my snowball, so hopefully that's working.
Yeah, I've got my volume at 100%, and your volume is really low.
How's that better?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. But Ethan, can you hear Ethan?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, this must be on my end because even Ethan's volume to me is really low for some reason. So it just must be my computer on the audio.
Ethan, how are you hearing me?
You sound great.
Okay, fantastic. Right. Because I dropped my fucking. I think my thing rolled off the desk the other day and just hit really nicely. So I tested it earlier and it sounded fine, but.
And then you guys can hear me good then?
You're great, Ryan.
Okay.
How's my sound quality? I have a better mic if I need to.
You're solid to me.
Okay, sounds good.
Got to get one of these, Ethan.
Yeah, man.
I got a better one.
Oh, you do? You?
I got the Yeti.
Oh, you got the blue Yeti?
Yeah, well, yeah, I got the black edition, so it's totally black. It's pretty badass.
Yeah, I was half hoping my blue balls had broken. So that I was going to get the Yeti.
Dude, I got it for like $130. It was on sale.
Yeah, I just killing myself because this was probably a year ago. So it was a downgraded version, I'm sure, but it was like $80, and I didn't pull the trigger, and I'm just a dumbass. I know.
Yeah, it was. I've been using it to record that podcast that I sent you the link to, and it's been working great.
Oh, cool. Now, I didn't click on that. I clicked on your bio, but is it Mormon centric? Is it Mormon themed, or is it something else?
Yeah, no, it's Mormon themed. It's specifically for Nevermos. I'm just telling.
That's right. Oh, you said that.
Telling the story of how I grew up, and I mean, anyone can listen to it, but I am specifically directing it to Nevermos.
Okay, so it's like you're going kind of your journey,
yeah, going chronologically, giving a lot of like the foundation, like explaining like what the belief system is, like right now. The most recent episode I just recorded was like my experience passing, preparing, and blessing the sacrament as in the Aaronic priesthood, right? So, and then just gonna take things chronologically and.
So, cool. Yeah. All right. Hi, Tom. What's up, man? All right. So I figure we'll kind of self-censor, try to jam through this and with as minimal editing as possible, and try to turn this out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as sort of a flow, we'll follow your guys' lead on what you want to ask us, but we kind of want to have this sort of have two themes to it. Obviously, Ethan's coming out with his blog, I think, tomorrow, and this will sort of be his first interview as Ethan, and you guys can ask him all kinds of questions about that if you want. And then, if you guys have questions about Mormon leaks since the last time we talked, obviously we've had tons of leaks since then. If there's any particular ones you want to talk about, or just anything you want to know about the status of Mormon leaks or anything like that, kind of like, hey, that we're approaching a year since I released those 15 videos.
So you just, can we ask our questions or what, Ryan? I mean, maybe that's my fucking outline. So just settle down back there and let's do a podcast.
All right.
And we're back.
Wait, quick question. Do you guys release the video of these now too, or no?
We do on Patreon. Are you good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the video goes out on to our Patreon listeners. So, man, they get a sneak peek potentially at the real Parley Privacy Pratt.
Parley Privacy Pratt.
Right. All right, so we got the Mormon Leaks guys here. And fortunately, I realized we did do an interview back in January with both of you guys and me and Tom.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I didn't let Tom speak very much after going back and listening to it. Sorry about that, Tom.
What's new, right?
Fair enough. But
leave now? Are you going to let me speak?
I know Tom's taking the lead. I'm out.
About damn time.
No shit. Let's make a good product. No, but I'm glad I went back through and just listened today, and we hit on some good stuff, and a lot of it was about the Elder Eyring's pay stub that had just come out. That was kind of part of the discussion, and then we talked about Mormon leaks generally. So if anyone hasn't heard that episode, they can go back. It was about late January. It's pretty easy to search Mormon leaks, but so since then, I hope you guys don't take this offense. Don't take offense. I really not aware of what other leaks have come out since the last time we did a podcast. So bring us up to speed on the significant leaks, I guess, since about January this year.
Well, there was one other episode that you're forgetting. I think we did it with you with that it was kind of a smackdown that we did on that media guide.
Did we do that?
Yeah. Remember it was like a 40-page. Remember we went and we read through it. I'm pretty sure you were. Maybe you weren't on that one with us. I thought you were.
Man, I don't. Dude, they all bleed together.
Yeah, but I mean, we've had a ton of leaks. I mean, almost every week since we started. We did take, after last conference, we took like a month off, and then over the summer we had a week here or there that we didn't leak anything. But we've had something to put out there almost every week since we started, and probably the biggest thing that we leaked since the pay stubs, I mean, well, there's probably a couple things. Probably the thing that got the most attention might have been the PowerPoint that was dubbed by many as the enemies list. And the reason why that made so much news is because the church tried to take it down. I mean, they sent us a DMCA takedown notice, which we responded with our attorney. And there was kind of a Streisand effect there. It got a lot more media attention after the takedown notice.
Right.
And the one thing about that leak is it really validated our website for the first time, because it was the first time that the church acknowledged the authenticity of any of our documents. And that was kind of a big deal.
I thought that they had confirmed the pay stub. That's
they never officially did, but part of their statement was they said they acknowledged that general authorities are paid the same base stipend, but they specifically said that they weren't going to comment on whether or not our documents were authentic, and they didn't comment on how much they received. So it was kind of a weirdly worded thing that sort of left the door open.
Non-denial more than anything. Yeah.
They've never denied the authenticity of any of our stuff, but it's always this sort of squirrely worded, no comment.
Right. So the PowerPoint, and then the
McConkie papers. A lot of people feel those were a big deal. Those came out in two different batches. We had a batch the week of Sunstone, the original batch. Now these were personal writings of Bruce R. McConkie that, as far as we can tell, have never been made available to the public at large. They've only been, and I've spoken to some historians since they've come out, and some of these historians I've spoken to have seen the documents, but in a very controlled setting. And I'm told that most of these documents are only shared very selectively by the family or whoever has control of these documents. And there was really one. I mean, a lot of it's really just boring, put yourself to sleep diatribes of a crazy old Mormon, ranting against evolution and things like this. But there's one document in particular that I think is a must read. It's my favorite one. I think it's most people's favorite, and that is it was almost like a journal entry. At least that's the way it was written, and it was his personal account of what happened behind the scenes when they lifted the ban on Black people. And there's nothing like controversial in it in the sense of, I can't believe we did this, or, I didn't want to do this, but I felt like I had to. He doesn't say anything like that. It's really more of just almost a neutral narrative of what happened. And there's really interesting things in it about how, I mean, during several of their meetings, they would get up and change into their full temple gear for the parts of the meeting as part of the sort of ceremonial nature of these proceedings. before they would vote. I mean, it was really fascinating stuff. And, he talks about how there were 2 of the apostles that weren't present. One of them most people know about, he was Mark E. Peterson, who was considered to be probably the most racist one on the group at that time. And he was sent to Brazil on assignment by the prophet so that he wasn't there for the vote. That's kind of been known out there, but, of course, he confirms that in this. He doesn't say he was sent for those reasons, but he just mentions that he wasn't there. And then the other one that a lot of people didn't realize he wasn't present, from what I can tell, is what's the name? Stapley is the last name. I can't remember his first name, but it's an apostle, last name Stapley.
Delbert?
And he was in the hospital. And he was also apparently one of the raging racists who would have likely voted against this. And they took the advantage of the fact that he was in the hospital. And Bruce R. McConkie in this account talks about how after they voted and made it final, they all went and visited him in the hospital to tell him. It's kind of interesting. But so you got the McConkie papers. Now, the McConkie family tried to threaten a lawsuit when we released those. We got a DMCA takedown notice, very similar to the one we received from the church, but this came from a private attorney, not from Kirk McConkie, from an attorney claiming to represent the heirs of Bruce McConkie and that they own the copyright. And again, they validated these documents because there were people wondering whether or not they were legit. And they list all of the documents in the takedown notice. So that was a nice thing for us. And we responded with our attorneys in a similar fashion to the way we responded last time. So I don't know, Ethan, what are some of the big leaks that we had that I haven't mentioned?
Yeah, those are the 2 biggest ones. And it's funny because those are the two biggest argument that we fabricated them. Like the McConkie papers are like full of typos, easily written up using like Microsoft Word. The PowerPoint presentation, like I could easily make something that looks exactly like that. But the church and the McConkie family completely validated the authenticity of these documents by issuing the DMCA request. So that was huge. But as far as other leaks, I mean, another one that got a lot of attention that's just like not necessarily significant is when we released a bunch of public figures that the church had done their work for, and Adolf Hitler was on that list.
As far as the temple work?
Yeah, temple work. Sorry, I should have specified that. Yeah,
but that was kind of, I mean, that's something that's not new.
I think what was significant about it was that I think that this was the first time that anybody had actually seen the actual temple record of it.
Yeah.
Official work scene. Yeah, right.
And showed he was sealed to Ava Braun and everything. This was sort of proof positive. The internet, Ethan, I think you remember this. When we released it, we were almost embarrassed to release it because we knew the information was already kind of known. And we were like, oh, this is going to be such a dud and we're going to get criticized for releasing stuff that's already known. But it blew up. I mean, it went viral. There were several blog posts out there on it. And I was contacted by a radio station up in Washington State.
Well, and Hitler was not the only one on that list. And there were many Native American chiefs that were on that list. And so a lot of Native American communities found out about it. And then Albert Einstein and Barley were also on the list.
Ethan, I'm getting you're getting feedback. Yeah, you're glitchy.
Yeah, I'm getting it too from him as well.
So I don't know, are you plugged in or?
I'm not. I'm at a hotel.
Oh, well, we'll continue on. Try this.
Yeah. Is that
with the Native American chiefs, we had I had a news station from Washington State call. I don't remember the name of the chief, but he was from that part of the country, back in the 1800s. And apparently, from what I was told, this chief was kind of like a Martin Luther King type figure within the Native American community. He sort of fought against the invasion of the white man, and he fought for Native American civil rights and for preserving their culture and not integrating the Western culture into his tribe and everything. And then, of course, here it is. The Mormons come and baptize them into their into their religion. So there was a news station up there that was going to cover that. So it was an interesting leak.
Cool.
Can you give us any updates on the legal proceedings? Are you guys like doing any other court hearings or appeals or anything like that?
Well, as of right now, the only thing we've received are the two, takedown notices that threatened a lawsuit, and neither party has responded since our response. So I guess I could just say the ball's in their court. I mean, they can easily choose to sue. We don't think they will. We feel like they were scare tactics. Our attorney tells us that these cases are pretty cut and dry in our favor. And he says it would be a huge stretch for an attorney to actually think they could win this case against us. So, I mean, that's not to say that they won't sue, and it's not to say we're guaranteed to win, but we're pretty confident that they were just scare tactics and they're not going to come after us anymore.
But you're not currently embroiled in any type of litigation or anything related to any documents?
No. But it's too early to tell, really, on the McConkie documents because we just responded. What was it, last week, Ethan, that we responded?
Yeah, it was just barely on Tuesday, but then with the church, it was way back in March.
Yeah, the church one, that ship probably has sailed. I mean, unless there's some other document in the future that they want to take action on. But yeah, with the McConkie documents, I suppose I don't know anything about these people, but I mean, I've been told when I was up at Sunstone and we had just received the takedown notice. I was talking to several people up there, independent of all of each other, came and said, "Hey, the McConkies are really known to be litigious." So, and I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, I suppose it's possible.
Well, they have one or two lawyers in their family. So.
A couple, sure. Well, hopefully one of them has enough common sense to realize it's a losing proposition. I mean, obviously they have more money than we do behind them.
Sure,
that's going to be an advantage they have. But
what of this though? What of the argument that, hey man, the family wants these personal documents not out there. These are private. These are, why not just, it's not really putting your thumb in the church's, eye. You're putting your thumb in some family members' eye that are kind of innocent to all this.
Yeah, well, I think, our response, I'll at least speak for myself, and, if Ethan has anything to add, he can. But for us, these documents are newsworthy because they provide additional insight into the mind of someone who many would argue is the most influential figure in modern Mormonism, and also one of the most controversial. And if he's not the most influential, he's definitely one of the most influential. And these documents, while the themes of them might be somewhat repetitive of what we already know about him, he does go into various different details and arguments that I believe haven't been shared before. And I've had multiple people who are actual historians, people with PhDs who are professors who write books about this stuff, contact me and tell me that these documents enhance their understanding of Bruce R. McConkie. In fact, I received an email just today from one of these guys who said that several of these documents help with better understanding the timeline of his I guess I think he's referred to it as sort of the evolution of his thoughts on certain doctrinal matters, because I guess there was somewhat of an evolution of his thoughts or whatever. And so because these documents range from the early 60s through his death, they sort of enhance that. And you're able to see, if you really were to study them out, you can see an evolution of his thoughts and theories. So, for us, it comes down to whether or not they're newsworthy.
You had me at McConkie. I'm just kidding.
Okay. I don't know if Ethan has anything to add to that or not. But.
Yeah, I was gonna say everything you said. It was interesting because like 2 or 3 days after we released the first batch, a McConkie historian released a blog post commenting on all the documents, and he didn't agree with us leaking them, and it was just ironic because in my mind he sealed the deal that they are that were covered under fair use and that they are newsworthy. Yeah. Him being a McConkie historian and writing about them. So right,
yeah. The guy's a public figure writing about religious things, whatever. Yeah. So that catches us up pretty much to some of the big ones that have come out so far.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if is there any other ones that are worth mentioning, Ethan?
I mean, we had a super controversial one when we released the video of Francis Bernard from BYU football team.
Oh yeah, that one actually went pretty big.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was that one?
You didn't see it?
I may have, and I don't know it by that title.
All right, go ahead.
So this was like I believe we released it like August 30th, so it was just under a month
recently.
ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a video of Francis Bernard, who is he's redshirting this year, but he's a linebacker for BYU. He's a great player. He's got a lot of potential, and he's had a great career so far. And it's him having a conversation with Provo police that was recorded by the housing manager where he was living at the time. And in the conversation with the police, he's getting a ticket for disruption of the peace or something like that. They were being loud, and it was like 1 a.m, and they were told to stop, and they didn't stop. And so they came with a ticket, and he was trying to talk his way out of it. And then the police officers asked him if they wanted to call his coach and that he could work it out. And then there was some references to the honor code and whatnot. And then at the end of the video, he realizes that he's being recorded, and he threatens to strangle the person recording the video in front of the police officers.
Well, and a couple of points too, I think that are important to point out is that it wasn't just a matter of them being up and partying after curfew. Our source told us that he's regularly contacted by the police for these parties that with, he's got girls and alcohol there late at night. And in the video, there is a reference by the police where they don't say what it is, but they reference to something in his apartment that is against the honor code, and how he probably doesn't want his coach to find it. And the football player in response to that says, but everybody in there is of age. Kind of hinting to the fact that it's alcohol, and the police officer says, well, it doesn't matter if they're of age, the honor code, we got a lot of, obviously from Mormons. And
was he punished for that? Ultimately, when that comes out like that, I mean, they must have taken some action.
So yeah, well, first of all, the video is from December of last year. Now, nobody really knew about this other than those involved, but he was suspended from the bowl game that was just a couple of weeks after this incident. So the church, the school apparently did find out about it and suspended him. And about 5 days before we released the video, it was announced in the newspaper, and BYU announced that he would be redshirting his junior year for personal reasons. And they would not go into what it was. So it was either this incident or other incidences since then.
Well,
it's a good move.
Yeah.
Well,
then we released the video, and then there was all this speculation online of why he was being redshirted, and this kind of like answered, that speculation. And I mean, we got, obviously the BYU football fans crucified us, which we expected. Something that I kind of expected, but probably happened more than I expected, was we got a lot of pushback within the ex-Mormon community as well, sort of thinking that we were taking some too much liberties and, in our influence within this community and sort of quote unquote ruining this kid's life. And I mean, we've done a couple of interviews. I've done a couple of interviews where we've really dissected this issue ad nauseum and explained our side. And I think a lot of people realized why we did it and how I really didn't think it was, I didn't at the time, and I still don't think it's going to ruin his life. And in fact, it's not even a story anymore. He hasn't been kicked off the team. He's still got to do his little red shirt suspension.
Well, that brings up an interesting question. As a kid, as a student athlete, fair game for you guys. If you guys are kind of about transparency and specifically about the Mormon, what is it about this kid?
Right.
So
it wasn't about him. So, it was about Well, go ahead, Ethan. You want to go jump in on that?
All right. How old is he?
He's like
22.
All right.
22,
So he's an adult.
He's a returned missionary. 22.
All right, but we get that a lot of time from a lot of, just outside in the world of sports. There's kind of this understood, whether through journalists and other I guess agencies, whatever, that sometimes the student athletes are out of bounds, right?
Well, we didn't want him to get in additional trouble for this, and we don't think he should. In fact, I would say that the punishment that he got of forcing a red shirt was probably too extreme. We released the video not because of him or trying to embarrass him. It was to show the inequity that's in the system, because we have there's students who, if they decide not to fake it anymore and they are honest with their bishop or whoever about the fact that they don't believe in the church anymore and they've done nothing else wrong against the honor code, they're going to get expelled from the school. I mean, unless they have a bishop that's going to cover for them. You have instances such as like Maddie Barney, who was covered ad nauseum in the media there, who was raped but was also breaking the honor code at the time, and she didn't get kicked out of the school, but they put such restrictions on her ability to come back that it kind of forced her to leave. And so we wanted to highlight the inequity that there is within the honor code. And I mean, we can't pick and choose the ways we're able to depict it. I would have loved a much better case to do it with, but this is what we received. And we felt that it showed that, at least to a certain extent, even though he got punished a little bit, he was still enrolled in classes. He's on the sideline at the games this year, even though he's redshirting. And he doesn't even lose these games. I mean, he just has to sit out a year, but he doesn't lose any eligibility. So the punishment was quite mild compared to what happens to a person.
My quarrel
Mhm.
is that really a Mormon issue? I mean, are you saying that student athletes get treated differently than other non-student athletes at higher learning institutions?
It's a Mormon issue because it highlights what is often referred to as leadership roulette. Okay, the tone and the way that the honor code is enforced. First of all, if we start with that, is the tone is set by the top, and so even though BYU is
my question really is, how is this different than any institution that also has certain because and I've represented students who get kicked out of who've gotten kicked out of ASU as lower standards that they have, but they have due process things. So kids get kicked out of school all the time, and there is inequity, especially amongst football. We know that, but amongst student athletes generally. So to me, it seems like it needlessly addresses an issue that's kind of a given, and to say this is unique feels so.
I would question that there is an adequate due process at BYU, though, because think about it like this.
There's not adequate due process at any school.
Fair enough.
Let's share. If we want to talk about academic, and this, I guess maybe this is where I'm, having seen how other schools handle discipline and handle suspension and expulsion and all those things. What I understand about the church, although troubling, is less troubling because this is a flawed system. This is a very, very flawed system in academia, and it's applied in a religious context to BYU. So
let me try to put it this way, and I think I can put it somewhat concisely. And by the way, I do think that your argument has validity to it, and I'm not suggesting that we're 100% right in what we did. So I can appreciate the fact that there's two sides to this story. But here's the thing: here you have with Francis Bernard.
Ryan, you knew we were gonna.
Yeah, that's fine.
So.
Look, with Francis Bernard, with this football player, I know you haven't seen the video, but I think Tom has seen the video. Here you've got a guy that, aside from these honor code violations that he had, is throwing out the N-word, throwing out F-bombs, threatening to kill this apartment manager and all this kind of stuff. Now, were they justified? Was it a heat of the moment thing? We'll grant all of that. Does it make him a bad guy? Absolutely not. I don't even think what he did is worth more than like a 1 or 2 game suspension. But if you have, let's talk about a regular student at BYU. If you have a regular student who, let's say they have sex outside of marriage and they're feeling guilty about it, and they go home for the summer to their home ward, and it's time for them to get their signature renewed for their endorsement, and they're feeling guilty, and they go to their bishop and they say, I had sex, blah, 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 blah. Well, if you have repentant, try to do a better job. Let's talk on the phone every week and all this stuff. And here, I'm not going to ruin your college career because of this. And here, I'll sign your endorsement. And another bishop back in wherever, home bishop, could have the same situation and say, oh, not only am I not signing your endorsement, but I'm putting you in front of a court. So you've got this leadership roulette at BYU that doesn't exist in any other institution, even with all of the flaws that other institutions may have. And when it comes to non-religious matters, I'm sure BYU has those as well. But this religious side of it adds this additional layer of inequity to where you can have people that commit the exact same offenses or at different degrees of offenses, and the whether or not they're getting kicked out is not uniform at all. And so if not, obviously we're not going to be able to get the honor code taken away. And I don't really pretend to think that I could even get that to be done. But at the very minimum, I would like this video I would like somebody who maybe gets caught drinking at a party or caught having sex and is being harassed by the honor code or by their home bishop. I'd like them to be able to pull up this video and say, okay, I screwed up. I'm just asking for the same treatment that Mr. Bernard got. Okay? And so it gives them that ammo. Now, is that a complete justification of having released the video and caused him this embarrassment? I'm not going to argue necessarily if somebody thinks that it's not worth it. I'll grant that maybe it's not. I think it was. I feel comfortable about it. But I do realize that this is not an airtight case on our part.
Well, one of the things that I do like about the video is that it shows kind of a transparency towards the biased police officers, where they were bringing up the honor code. That didn't make a lot of sense to me at all. It was really, it's not even in their jurisdiction.
Yeah.
It up. And when I first watched it, I was like, if anything productive comes from this leak of this video, I do hope that at least BYU police or Provo police or whoever sees and says, yeah, I think we might have overstepped our bounds there a little bit.
Yeah, and to me, it's a bet. We're releasing this as to highlight police conduct has a lot more validity than the other to me, because that is significant. And and I know Ryan and I see these cases. We're aware of other cases where police have given deference to people who are determined to have position in the church. So to me, that's a great reason to release it, and certainly resolves all my pushbacks for.
I know Ethan wanted
as if you needed me. I will allow it.
Ethan, I know Ethan wanted to say something about this.
I just was gonna, when Tom was talking about that, about the police, that's one issue that I wanted to bring up too. I mean, the Provo police, especially in the situation of Maddie Barney and the light that was shined on them there, where they reported her to the honor code office, that's way outside their jurisdiction and an abuse of power, in my opinion. And they should have learned their lesson. And this Bernard incident took place, if I'm not mistaken, it took place after the Maddie Barney incident, after the light and everything was shined on them. So it's concerning that it's still that they didn't learn their lesson. However, I will say this really quick. There were two cops in the video, and it was obvious to me, at least personally, that one was very uncomfortable with the fact that they didn't mention the honor code.
Yeah, it did.
Oh, interesting.
And also, if any BYU fans happen to listen to this, and you might be one of those people that accused us of being like University of Utah homers that were trying to hurt I'm not from Utah, and I could care less about BYU or Utah football. And Ethan is a diehard, I don't know how, but he is a diehard BYU football fan. So
still,
I actually addressed this in one of my episodes of My Mormon Experience. If you go and read or listen to Chapter 3 of My Mormon Experience, I talk about that exact subject.
All right.
It's an internal ethical struggle that I have.
I was such an anti-BYU guy for so long. I was just very, very bitter, just very anti-BYU football for a lot of reasons.
Now you're on board. Now you got the BYU.
No, now they have. It's just kind of sad now. Ever since they went independent, they just are so irrelevant that it's. Yep. I can't even find any glee when they lose now. It's just like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
See, it's difficult. So
I'm telling you, man.
I'm a big sports fan, and I grew up. We had season tickets to BYU games. I grew up in Provo, right? It's it's my hometown team, so it's a huge struggle for me.
No, you're not the only one. I think Randy has that at some point, or went through that at some point, as I recall, in his transition. So yeah, that's interesting. So what? Big reveal. Privacy Pratt's Ethan Dodge.
That was a
woo.
Yeah.
jeez.
I thought I was going to Rick and Morty that. I've just been watching a lot of Rick and Morty where on next week's Rick and Morty this, and then he just says, yeah, it's going to be this. This is what's going to happen.
It's way more recognition than I deserve anyway, so thanks.
Yeah. Well, good. So let's talk about that for a minute. The whole coming out and in a world where you're we're trying to be transparent, the most non-transparent guy in the transparency game. Did you felt any conflict over that? You were being anonymous and wanted very much things to be private and not known, and meanwhile saying transparency is really important. I'm going to be the conduit of transparency.
I mean, I got a lot of help for it, but I never lost sleep over it. No.
It's amazing how when you want your own shit private, we tend to find it pretty justified in that. It's not difficult, is it?
Well, I mean, I think I had some good reasons, which I think you guys are aware of, and the top one being that somebody very close to me works for the church.
Yeah, so I want to call you out on that because I went back and listened to our episode, and you didn't say that was the number one reason.
It's true. I did not.
You obfuscated in a conversation about transparency.
Yeah.
I think we call that lie.
You're such a lawyer, aren't you?
I've been accused of it before. Yeah.
Actually,
no. So seriously, so I'm going to hopefully splice some of this in, but you said before it was really your concern with kind of your potentially career, but really reputation and family members, hurting family members was what I recall. But that wasn't the primary reason, really, right?
No, and in fact, I remember when I was on the show last time, I was debating whether or not even mentioning it, and then I did, and I remember immediately regretting it. But hindsight's 20/20, and I don't regret it anymore. And actually, Ryan knows I went back and forth for a long time on whether or not to mention this in my blog post that I came out in. And I decided ultimately it was a good idea because it definitely was the number one reason. And then the other two reasons that I list, that of my career and my relationship with my active family, those were just secondary and precautionary.
Right. Now, so your blog post where you do the big reveal isn't out today, right? It comes out tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow, the 25th, I believe is the date. Yep.
Okay, cool. So hopefully this will come out right on the tail end of that, or just the day following. But now even in your blog post, you seem to kind of want to not avoid specifics, but that number one reason of having a family member that's employed by the church or somehow works for the church, that's a real thing, yeah.
Yeah, and like I say in the blog post, I don't want to go into a ton of detail out of respect for this person. This person does know, but did not know until yesterday, which was the 23rd of September.
So what was their reaction?
I'm not going to go into that, just out of respect for them. But
all right. So anyone out there who wants to leak this information on Mormon leaks, go ahead and email that to Infants on Thrones.
Hey, they can always submit it to Mormon Leaks because I'm the one that receives the leaks. So,
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean.
So are you worried that people now, just once they know your identity, now this causes people to be like, now I want to know? Do you think there maybe might be just getting out in front of it a little bit and saying, look, here's what it is. Eventually people work hard enough, they're going to find out. So bam, let's just deal. Because I'm Mormon leaks.
Yeah. I mean, people are going to find out. I just, right now I've just made the decision that I don't want to go into detail about it now.
Okay.
So,
well, that is your right.
Thank you.
And people can draw whatever conclusions they want to regarding your credibility as a
Yeah.
result.
There will be some active Mormon listening to this that's now going to write a blog post about how our complete mission is invalidated because of the fact that he won't say who this family member is.
No, but that's so. My last line was, that I hope that was dry enough to be. That's the point. That's exactly the point, man.
Yeah.
Someone's going to make that argument.
But I'm not claiming that you have to do exactly what I say verbatim to get to heaven. So
that we yet.
Yeah. Hey, that's phase 2 of Mormon Leaks. That's phase 2.
Right. You just started a podcast. What's next, man? You're going to ask for donations. You're going to start going on conferences. You're going to do life coaching. It's going to be
life coaching. Nobody wants life coaching from me.
So Ethan, since this is a podcast and most podcast listeners don't read blogs, why don't you hit on some of the points as to why you did want to stay private at the beginning and what led you to want to reveal your identity now?
So that's a funny point that you make, that most podcast listeners don't read blogs. And so my podcast that I just started is a blog that I've turned into a podcast.
So you're trying to hit both.
Yeah. Because I'm one of those people. I prefer to consume my content in audio version.
There you go. Amen.
Uh-oh.
No, keep going.
We got you.
His video froze.
Oh, did it?
Oh, yeah.
Ethan, can you hear us?
Yeah, he's froze.
Oh, somebody in his hotel room streaming porn.
He's got that
That's
horrible.
right, man. He's
got that horrible hotel Wi-Fi.
Especially Sunday night, man.
Or this was intentional, and the church could finally intercept it.
Yeah, they heard who privacy was, and they're like hacking.
You're gonna reveal your identity? Cut.
How about this? How about that?
He'll come back.
Yeah. Here comes the horns, the slow jazz.
Yeah, I'm sure whoever edits this will come up with a way to make this funny.
Dun, 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 dun,
Can
dun.
you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I apologize. What was the last thing you heard me say?
That you like to consume your content through audio.
Yeah. So
Just the silver one, yeah.
and I plan on recording an audio version of my coming out blog tonight, actually. So podcasters can listen to it. Anyway.
Okay, so the podcast is effectively just an audio version of your blog, or vice versa.
Yeah. Well, so my Mormon experience is a blog series that I started, and then I decided to make it into a podcast as well because I prefer audio versions of things. And then my blog of coming out tomorrow is not part of my Mormon experience, but I am recording an audio version of it, and it will be on my website as well.
It's a good podcast, by the way. I have listened to some or most of it.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I mean, with one criticism, that it feels like as soon as you start to enjoy it, you cut it off. The damn episodes are like 45 minutes long, man.
Yeah. Well, that's probably the number one criticism I've gotten, actually.
But as a compliment, it's actually really well produced, and I actually
thank
enjoy
you.
it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I will probably. It's just really easy for me to like pump out a blog post that's that long and then and record it fairly quickly, right? But anyway, I'm sure they're going to get longer with time as I start telling more stories. Anyway, you asked me 2 questions. Let's get to those questions. Do you mind repeating them?
What led you to want to stay private, keep your identity hidden, and then what led you to want to reveal it now?
Yeah. So there were 3 reasons. The top one being somebody close to me works for the church. The other one being I was unsure at the time. Now, this was a year ago that I reached out to Ryan, and I was unsure at the time of the potential effects that it would have on my career. I work in cybersecurity. I'm paid to protect sensitive and confidential information, right? And I was unsure of how that would affect my career. I'm sorry?
So that's kind of your job. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's what I do for a living. And then, but since then, I've met with many people in my industry that I trust, and the consensus was that it would not have a negative effect on my job except for in on my career, sorry, except for in Utah, or if I ever have a Mormon manager or hiring manager.
Well, we've all stumbled into that issue.
Yeah,
from time to
exactly,
time.
right. So, and
but
then
not
the other
globally.
one
There's
was
not going
just-
to there's not going to be a perspective of, hey, you're really kind of supposed to be keeping this stuff, and that's antithetical to what your mission is and what you've kind of signed on to do. So now you're a traitor. There's not going to be anything like that.
No, I mean, because I'm not breaking the law, right?
Right.
I mean, if they want a reference from my past employer, like every single one of my past employers will tell them that I never did anything shady and that I did what I was supposed to do, right? So I'm not worried about it, especially after talking to many people in my industry about it, and they're not worried about it either. So
yeah, you got
and
a
then the
lot of
third one
open source type people in your industry, right? Everyone's like, more information out there's better sometimes, right?
Oh yeah. I actually gave a talk at DEF CON, which is the largest hacker conference in the world, about Mormon leaks under the identity of Privacy P. Pratt, and it was in there.
This is an in-person presentation.
Yeah. So it was an off the record track at this conference where they don't do any recordings. They watch for cell phones. You can't bring your cell phone out of your pocket. No recording, nothing. And I gave a talk there, and it went really well, and the room was totally full. And that's just a testament to exactly what you said. There's a lot of people like of that mindset in my industry.
Yeah.
And then my third reason was I mean, just like any other person who leaves the church, they're worried about the effects that it's going to have on their faithful family members. That's still concerning to me, but to me, it's more important to be authentic to myself, and then work out the bumps that are going to happen in those relationships later.
Right. So there's one thing to leave the church. There's another thing to do a podcast about it, to be Mormon Link, start any oppose, do these things that, any people that have done certain projects and the impact that has on their family, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, and my family members that are still active know that I've left the church. I mean,
Sure.
I haven't kept that a secret, but definitely kept Mormon leaks a secret for a good amount of time.
So does your family know? I know you came out to the person, kind of let that person know. So have you blanketed your family with this information as well yet?
I have not. No.
Do you intend to? How do you?
No, they're probably gonna find out via the blog as well. It's just a personal decision that I've made.
No. So you're ready for the fallout
to be
tomorrow.
Honest,
well, I mean, personally, from a family standpoint,
yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, so I addressed this in the blog post. I've been going to therapy ever since I left the church, and this is something that I've talked to my therapist very extensively about. And I mean, it's going to be very hard. It's like undoubtedly, and there's going to be fallout, and relationships are going to be hurt. But I honestly think that over time, we all know between the TBM community and the ex-Mormon community, there's so much contention and so much misunderstanding. And I'm convinced that the only way that we can fix that is if everybody is authentic, and then we try and reach a place of empathy, and we know each other's stories, and we know where each other's coming from. Only then are we going to be able to reach understanding and then empathize with each other. And this is my first step towards that.
Good for you, man. I mean, I know for me, even though I've met and talked and listened to a lot of ex-Mormon stories, the pain is still just as raw and as real as anything in the world. And my heart goes out to you, man. This is a
Thank you.
tough time for you.
Thank you.
So why come out now?
Well, I mean, so that's the biggest reason. What I just touched on is I've been, so I'm not a fan of censorship, obviously. And I think self-censorship is probably the worst kind. And I've been censoring myself for the past year on who I really am, and what I'm really doing. It's been hard for me. 'Cause, I mean, I'll be completely honest. I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish at Mormon Leaks. I have a lot of fun doing it, and I'm excited to be able to talk openly about it. I mean, it's I think so. I'm going to compare it to somebody in the LGBT community coming out. However, I will preface it that theirs obviously is magnitudes more impactful than my experience. I'm not trying to diminish theirs at all, but I imagine that I know I have a lot of gay friends that felt completely liberated when they did come out, that they were finally able to be authentic and open with themselves, and I imagine it's going to be a very similar feeling. And not only that, I want to be an example. I don't want to be somebody that somebody could point to and be like, look, he's staying anonymous, so apparently there is something to hide from. I want to be someone that people can point to and say, yes, like, I'm going to stand up to the church. I'm not going to cower to the church. I'm not going to cower to my family. I'm not going to, sorry, my wits are failing me, but you guys get what I'm saying, that
Yeah.
I want to be a symbol for people to stand up for what they believe in, even if it's controversial and not wanted where they are. People need to stand up and own up to what they think is right.
Yeah.
Ryan, talk about how it's been maybe sharing the public load of Mormon leaks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to that part of it. I think just recently, Ethan has been a little bit more active on commenting on Reddit, of course, under his privacy pratt. And even just that has been good, because I mean, I didn't mind shouldering the entire weight. I think I did a pretty good job at it, but it definitely helps to be able to, you know, have a true sort of sidekick number two, whatever you want to call it, to sort of share that and be that second voice to back up what I'm saying. I've been wanting this day to come for a while. I think if someone were to go back and to look at all of our interactions over the last year, I'm frequently asking him if it's time. I mean, I don't think I ever, you know, came off as like trying to force him to do it, but I definitely was frequently encouraging him to find the right time to do it.
Sure.
So,
yeah, we had one guy that was trying to be anonymous for a while, that Jesse Smith guy, and he felt
you,
the
Tom?
same way.
I do remember that. Who was that?
That was
Scott.
It was Scott. That's right. I do remember that.
Yeah.
So,
although, I mean, same. A lot of similar reasons, though.
Can I just read one paragraph from the blog post really quick that sums up why I'm coming out pretty well? It says, I not only for myself, but for the countless others who have censored themselves because of the accusations of not being able to leave the church alone. This applies not to just ex-Mormons, but to anyone else who has lost their faith or stepped away from lifelong beliefs. We should not have to live in fear of strained relationships, hostile accusations, and losing our loved ones for simply expressing our discontent and contrary opinions. We should be proud of our journey and feel free to express the feelings and ideas we have developed through it. We should contend that which we think is hurtful and share our stories. Only then will we reach a state of empathy between ourselves and our faithful loved ones. We are valid. We are real.
That's really well said.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I got a question. Mormon leaks. Your reach, your leak, does that involve any plans or any expanding that into the Exmo community? Because you kind of did that a little bit, Ryan. You kind of dipped your toe into the John DeLynn controversy.
Oh, right.
A little bit ago.
Yeah, and
got shit for it, as I recall.
Yeah, I'll speak for myself on this. I have dabbled in a little bit of blogging, and I think when I addressed the John DeLynn situation, which I think which ended up being a series of 3 blog posts about the whole thing, that was
just
really
to
my
clarify,
first.
when we say the John DeLynn thing, there's no That could be a lot of things, but
Oh, sure. It was, yeah. So I
wasn't. I wasn't trying to take a shot at John. I'm just saying.
No, you're right. You're
prominent guy. Yeah.
It was Christy Money, who used to work with him. Her and Kate Kelly sort of called him out on Facebook, made some accusations that not only that he was supposedly a sexist, but also that he was possibly being shady with the finances. And one of the things that they pointed to in that was the fact that it was like June or late May or June, and he hadn't released the previous year's financials yet. And the reason that I jumped in was because I felt like, and by the way, I'm not talking behind John's back here. I've actually had this exact conversation with John on the phone and in the blog post, obviously. But I thought that John handled the situation very poorly. And I also am not a huge fan of the way that Kate Kelly and Christy Money went about it. And I actually say that in the blog post as well. But I thought that John, being the person that he is, handled it very, very poorly, and actually probably made matters worse through his sort of blocking of people and non-response responses and all this kind of stuff. And I kind of lay that out, and I put an emphasis in my blog post about how at the core issue here was the fact that not that he did anything wrong, because there's no evidence of that, but that he didn't publish his finances, and his excuses were, in my opinion, not valid. And I kind of threw out a little bit of maybe an appeal to authority there, because I have I'm an auditor. I have a master's degree in accounting, and I kind of put a little bit of my personal professional knowledge in there to support my assertion. And the blog post, it kind of went viral, at least within the ex-Mormon community. I mean, it got thousands of views within a day. And a lot of it had to do, I had some pretty good clickbait
You're a click.
Stay humble, all right.
Yeah, man, been a little clickbaity.
No, the titles were totally clickbaity. I'm
intentionally, yeah.
Yeah, I tried to, and every blog post I've written, I've tried to do a clickbait title, and I don't necessarily want to keep that. Now, my other posts, some of them have to do with Mormon leak stuff, but some of them don't. So I have sort of dabbled in sort of expressing my opinions outside of Mormon leaks, the mind of Ryan McKnight. And that was kind of
my question. At one point, when you're blogging, this is just the mind and opinion of Ryan McKnight, not the from the desk of Mormon leaks. You're speaking as a man, more as a Mormon leaks prophet.
Absolutely. And so it should have no reflection on the organization. The organization is still true, even if you don't agree with my personal opinions. And I'm prone to mistakes. I mean, I think I even wrote one blog post apologizing for probably some things I poorly worded in a previous post. So but yeah, it really is just sort of my musings. And I suppose you could say that I'm taking advantage of the fact that I've got a platform through Mormon Leaks that I can get people to click on a blog post that I write. Now, I've got some ideas I'd like to get out there.
Sure. Well, so let me go back to that issue. Mm-hmm. Did you get some criticism in the ex-Mo community that, hey, don't be peeing, shitting where you eat, or don't, you're supposed to be the anti-Mormon guy, or the, going after Mormon church, a house divided, or any other, metaphor or example you can come up with. Did you get some of that?
I've had people disagree with some of my opinions in the blog post, but as far as saying sort of stay in your lane type criticism, I think I've only had one. And it actually came from a close friend of mine who I actually have a lot of respect for, and is somebody that I actually know in real life. And we had, he kept telling me, I got to talk to you about something. I got to talk to you about something. And we just kept missing. Our connections never happened. We actually went to dinner about maybe a month ago. And he said, I love your blog posts. I actually agree with a lot of them. But, he's like, some of them, you're kind of treading into areas that are outside of your expertise, or at least perceived expertise, and you could ruin, if you're trying to, he told me, be careful about trying to become a brand that is Ryan McKnight, as opposed to focusing on the brand of Mormon Leaks. And, it was constructive criticism, and I took it to heart, but
it wasn't just, hey, we don't want you criticizing, or you shouldn't be criticizing ex-Mos or anything like that.
No. And you know what, if anybody does say that, I don't really care about that type of criticism.
Yeah. I always say it because we seem to get it all the time.
Oh yeah.
anytime we take on or criticize anything in our sphere, our world, we get that.
I'm trying to remember if I got any criticism like that with the John DeLynn thing. But the thing is I think at the time a lot of people were they weren't necessarily siding with Kate Kelly, but they were definitely thinking that, hey, John did kind of handle this poorly. So I don't really think I got anything with that situation of like, hey, why are you criticizing a fellow ex-Mormon? And even I was kind of worried about how John would react to it. I didn't give him a heads up about the blog, although I did give Kate Kelly a heads up about it. I let her know that I was going to publish a blog about it, but I didn't give John a heads up. And he actually called me that night. I think it was the same night I published the blog, and we had a good conversation about it. And he told me over the phone that he appreciated he actually took to heart and appreciated what I said and felt that I was coming from a sincere place and not just trying to criticize. So I have no reason to believe that he wasn't serious about that.
Right.
And so yeah, I don't really think I've had a lot of that pushback of stop criticizing. But again, if anybody listening, if they want to do that, that's not the kind of criticism I'm going to respond to. I'm more interested in criticism of why something I say might be invalid or incorrect.
Sure. Well, so Mormon Leaks guys, do you have any information on why this year, for the first time in I don't know how many years, John DeLynn wasn't involved in Sunstone at all?
I'm not going to comment on that. So I'm not going
to. That's a yes.
Well, no, I'm not. I don't want to touch that. Look, a lot of people will ask me similar type questions and stuff. And the reality is I do talk to a lot of the movers and shakers in the ex-Mormon community from time to time. And so do I get told this stuff and hear stuff? Yes. I mean, do I know 100% what's true and what's not true? No. I mean, I don't know. I think John should.
It's something nobody's talking about, and I'm interested in that.
I think this goes. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even want to touch this. So you go ahead and do a little monologue riff if you want on this.
No, I don't know. Not unlike Joe Rogan, I'm just the guy asking the questions.
Okay.
What? What are you saying, Tom? What are you saying?
Yeah, right as you're shit stirring it up.
Yeah.
I'm just observant to the fact that for the first time in a long time, he was not affiliated with Sunstone at all.
I'm
making that observation, and then I'm making the observation that no one's talking about it. It's the most.
He did announce
secret that nobody is talking about.
John did announce, I think, a week or two before Sunstone that, he said something to the effect of he wish he could go, but he was going to speak at an Oasis event in Colorado. So maybe he had a scheduling conflict.
Are you uncomfortable, Tom?
Yeah, I am, because Brian is speaking like what is coming out of my head. Like, I don't know. I mean, he said this. It could be he could have had diarrhea over the weekend.
I don't know. This just was in my head. I don't know.
All right. Well, so if John listens to this, I mean, Matt is the one that asked the question, not me. No, I'm just kidding. Look, it's a good question. I think he should answer the question if somebody wants to pose it to him.
Yeah. So I was going to ask a question about Bill Real too, whether or not.
Yeah, I like Bill. No, ask about Bill. I like Bill. I did listen to your guys' episode. I know it was, he took a beating. I actually know Bill fairly well. I have dinner with him frequently, or lunch with him, semi-frequently, and we have several mutual friends. Bill's a good guy, but also Bill deserves the tough questions that he gets. And I told him that too. I've told him that. And he realizes that even if he gets frustrated, I think he realizes that, these questions are legit and he can't run from them.
My question's just always is, when a person says, I was teasing, obviously, when I say, I'm just the guy asking the questions. And I feel that Bill has tried to do that a little too much. Like John used to do that a little too much. And I knew when John was doing it, it was agenda driven, and it was not entirely accurate. He was in a different place than he was letting on. And that's my sense with Bill, which is why I guess I was pushing back more. So Mormon Leaks, any insight on that? Is Bill Real who he says he is, or does he hold a different position? Is he just a persona?
Well, I don't want to speak for Bill Real. I mean, he can speak for himself, but I will say this. Every time we have dinner, or lunch, every time I'm with him in person, I say to him, Bill, when are you going to realize that it's not worth staying and that it's all a bunch of shit? I said, when are you going to realize this? And your life is going to be so much better when you just accept that there is no value in the church. Because he does seem to be, and even in private conversations, he seems to really, I don't know where his actual testimony is at. I really don't know. But he does seem to sincerely believe that he can make a difference in the church and that there's something worth salvaging there. And on that point, whether he has a small testimony or a big testimony or no testimony, that whole point about there being something worth salvaging, I'm not on board with. So,
yeah,
he goes to church every week. So, I mean, the guy obviously believes in it to some extent. I don't know. I can't even go to church 1 week. I wouldn't even survive. I'd walk in and I'd walk straight through the hall to the next exit.
Well, you'd catch on fire.
Well, I'd catch on fire. There may be people waiting there to kick me out against my will, but
that dude's Bill's on the path to excommunication, though, man. So
maybe
his last few posts and topics have been fairly inflammatory, man.
He does seem to be getting a lot bolder in his posts. So I don't know. It's been probably a month since I've seen him. I'm going to see him again on this Friday, and then I think again in a week after that. So I'll make sure I ask him on behalf of you for an update on his testimony.
My question is the guy we hear on the podcast, is that more of a character, more of a persona,
right,
or is that the same cat you're going to talk to behind?
Yeah.
When it's not recording, because and that's the one thing I guess I value is with podcasting, and at least our medium is sometimes we're a little too honest and a little too familiar, and people say, oh, it's like talking to a bunch of friends, and I value that.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's what's happening, or if I'm getting a persona, if I'm going to get a different dude. When I
believe it or not, I've never listened to any of his podcast episodes. So I read his Facebook stuff and all that kind of stuff, and I have literally never listened to one of his podcasts.
Am I the only one here that's listened to one?
No, I've listened to some.
Okay.
I
think I've listened to 2.
Yeah, I just can't.
By the way,
I can't listen. I tried to listen to one time before I ever knew him. And I don't know, this was probably like 2 years ago, and I've tried to listen to him and like some Fair Mormon podcasts, and I can't do it. I mean, I get like 5 minutes in and I'm already hearing this big setup of some big apologetic argument. I can't even, it's like nails on a chalkboard. Yeah, it's just not interesting.
There's a couple episodes that he actually goes off taking the church or the leaders to task about.
Yeah. I've heard about his episode about the spiritual abuse or whatever they calls it. Yeah. It was one of his more recent ones.
Yeah, I listened to, that's the one that prompted, I listened to that episode, and then we had our interview with him on that.
I had lunch with him right after he posted it. And I honestly don't even remember the specifics he told me about it, but look, I think that go ahead. If you met him in real life and had dinner with him, I do think he'd probably be largely the same as what you would hear on the podcast. Definitely more than other ex-Mormon podcasters out there, but maybe not as much as somebody like myself or you guys, because I do feel like, I mean, I don't know what other people would say, but I do feel like I'm the same when the recording's going and when it's not.
We've had not off the record. We've had phone calls, just talking about stuff, and it goes like this. It's like this.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think I would say he's definitely way more authentic than not. So I don't think he's putting on a big, like a huge fraud, and that he's like, he's at home saying, he doesn't, believe in any of it. And how can he? I mean, if he is doing that, I don't know about it.
Yeah. And that was. I don't know. Maybe I think that's where a lot of my anger came from before. I felt that he was being a dude, being a podcaster, rather than just Bill Real the guy. And I was trying to draw that distinction, but I don't think it happened very well. Anyway, that was my question, because in an area that's where I still struggle, and I have that hangover we always talk about transparency, and it's right back to this theme of what you guys do, right? Of transparency and let's be straight and all those things we criticize the church about. And if the critics are not as are also kind of doing a bit or doing a thing, then I just think that's problematic. I don't like it. I remember that's where the TBM whisper became a thing at one point, because there was a talk about, I wish we could get some of their voices, or maybe a little more balance, and get we're just kind of this echo chamber, and we could find somebody that would just do that could do a character and just fit that, make those arguments, and it just was decided that just is not what we're about, and there's no reason to do it anyway. So that's where my hangover comes in. If I'm and I may be wrong, maybe he's completely who he is. Anyway, I'm gonna cut that.
Sorry.
Oh, he's back.
Oh,
all right.
We were just talking shit about you.
That's
so.
justified. Okay, and we're back recording. Not sure what happened. A little glitch.
I can't remember what you were saying there, but
it didn't matter. I was trying to get dirt on Bill Real. I figure I didn't want to bring the Mormon Links guys on just to try to address any rumors that I've heard and just be like, true.
I mean, look, I know I know you're kind of joking and stuff, but on a serious note, I mean, one of the things that we really try to focus on is this isn't about Bill Real or John DeLynn, but just in general, we try not to publish rumors. I hear stuff all the time about things that are supposedly happening at church office buildings, and some things I think are really credible, but we never publish them because we try to make our brand all about documents or videos. And so I'm not saying I would never publish a rumor, but it would have to be a really, really unique situation for us to publish a rumor that doesn't have any documentation to back it up.
Okay, I have a follow-up question on that point. If you've got a rumor, or even just like a rumor of a rumor,
mm-hmm.
something that's so juicy that both either you, Ethan, or Ryan think we've got to follow this up, would you guys actually pursue a lead like that and say, if this is even small of a possibility that's true?
I have some situations like that where I don't think we would ever pursue it because we don't want to be accused of sort of soliciting leaks. But I have given information to news outlets and said, listen, I don't know if there's anything here, but this is what I'm being told, and this might be where you might be able to find it. If you can get somebody on the phone that's willing to talk to you or whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't think anything's gone anywhere like that yet, but I've definitely handed information like that over to news outlets.
All right, so it's not something you're going to publish as a Mormon Links, but if other people want to track that down, it becomes a story. Cool.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I would never publish. I mean, I'm just saying it would have to be a really. I can't even think of an example right now where we would publish a rumor, but I'm sure maybe one exists. I don't know.
He touches on a very good point. We're not journalists. We're not investigative journalists, but we do work with investigative journalists. We have given them leads before. If that investigative journalist did corroborate the documentation that we provided them with some bigger thing going on, then we would probably publish it alongside with a story from that journalist, right?
Sure.
We would never publish it unless it was verified. Absolutely not.
And I'll give you an example. I'm not going to give you the details because they're not confirmed. I don't want this to create a bunch of speculation. But when that guy Hamula got excommunicated. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I was getting some information that I felt was pretty credible surrounding some of the reasons why he was excommunicated, but I didn't have the hard proof in my hand. And I was working, I don't want to say what publication, but let's just say it wasn't a Utah publication. I was working with a very big publication trying to get to the bottom of this. And ultimately, we were able to get some information, but not to the level where this publication felt comfortable publishing it. So I guess it would still be classified as rumor, but we did try. Did try.
Cool. Oh, that's interesting. But mostly about documents, tangible things, releasing these things rather than just
and
TMZ.
We try to keep,
you're not quite TMZ.
We try to keep our commentary to a minimum. I mean, it's not that we never comment on the leaks, but we try to keep it to a minimum. So we just publish the information. We let everybody else come to whatever conclusion they want to about it. I'm not. we will sometimes might go onto a podcast and give our opinion, or maybe write a blog post about it or whatever. But the actual press release is going to be devoid of any editorializing, and just sort of stick to the facts of the document. A date, if we know the date, who it was given to, who the audience was intended, whatever. And then whether or not it's a good or a bad thing, that we'll let the public decide. We had, I think I'm comfortable saying that every single one of our leaks could easily, if you just read the wiki entry and looked at the leak, you could spin every one of our leaks in a positive to the church. And some of them would even be spun by ex-Mormons as a positive. Like we had the one leak about immigration and how they treat DACA recipients. Of course, who knows what they're doing now with the latest, with what Trump's doing with DACA, but this was obviously prior to that. And it just sort of outlined the church's policies and procedures with DACA people who are going to serve a mission, and also well, actually, I don't know if it dealt with serving a mission. It was more of receiving church welfare. And the ultimate, it was kind of a long thing, but the ultimate outcome of it all was that the legal status is not going to affect their welfare, receiving welfare, church welfare. It shouldn't even be asked, type of a thing. And so obviously a lot of ex-Mormons saw that as a positive for the church. And actually we had Mormons that said, I think I saw a Mormon comment saying it wasn't a positive thing, and actually questioning the validity of it, thinking that, because I guess they think that whenever in their ward that they ask if they're illegal, or I don't know what the actual practice is on the ground, whether or not bishops make it a practice to find out if the welfare recipients are legal or not.
My guess, just bishop roulette. I know that in my very limited circle, if that the church has bent over backwards to help immigrants and people who who don't have legal status or whatever, they're very, very supportive of them. And from missions, I mean, I know that there was a kid in my ward. No question, he was illegal. Did not have legal status, I think is the right way to say it. And was going on a mission. They made sure to keep him within the state so that there wouldn't be any, issues with passports, visas, those types of things. He could go to another state, come back, not have any risk or exposure.
Spun positive to the church.
Dang, man.
All right, Matt.
One more time, you strike out.
Dude, I know, man.
I just got a brand new. See, I knew I had you guys today, and I went and bought a brand new modem and router because I
need something. So anyway, immigration. Church tends to be pretty pro-immigration.
Yeah, and one of the things I was saying after you disappeared there and it wasn't recording was that one of the interesting aspects about that memo was it was outlining a guideline for local leadership that they should not require anybody, but especially illegal immigrants, to work in exchange for welfare benefits, like work at Deseret Industries or volunteer to clean the chapel, things like that. They shouldn't make it contingent, because that type of a situation could be misinterpreted as giving employment to an illegal immigrant.
Oh, right. So it exposed them to liability. Oh, that's
yeah. So the memo was about stuff like that, but I mean, it was something that was easily seen as positive. But just to reiterate my previous point, I don't think none of our documents that we've released, I don't think, are inherently negative about the church. Because even the Francis Bernard video, you can say, well, look how compassionate they were that they didn't kick him out of school. I mean, you're obviously ignoring the bigger issue of people that are getting kicked out of school for silly reasons, but you still could look at that and say, hey, they could have, they could have ruined his life over calling, threatening to kill somebody and using the N-word on a camera, and they didn't. So you could spin any of these things positively, and we don't try to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
What about the leak that was did you guys were you involved with the missionary who was in Houston?
Yeah.
Reach out to the mission president.
Yeah.
Was that you guys that were involved in that one?
So I that father who was fine with having his name known in the leak, his name is John O'Connor.
Real quick, this is give the full story real quick. And
so I'll give you the full story here. It was during Hurricane Harvey. that just happened, and there was this guy went onto Reddit, and anonymous name, didn't post these emails, but he was very frustrated, and he said, I've been talking to the mission president, who my son's out there, and he won't give me my son's phone number. I want to talk to my son. Harvey's supposed to hit within the next 24 hours. So I sent him a message, and I said, hey, listen, I don't know, if there's anything Mormon Leaks can do to bring attention to your situation, I'm open to that, because I'd like you to be able to talk to your son. And we ended up talking on the phone, and he wanted me to publish these emails, this email chain, and he had published some of the text on Reddit, but he hadn't published the whole thing, and he hadn't actually published the actual emails. So basically, all of the parents received a mass email from the mission president outlining the mission's sort of disaster preparedness plan.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do. They're going to call the office twice a day to all blah, 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 blah. Stay away from standing water. And this guy, John O'Connor, who is an ex-Mormon, but his wife apparently and his kids are all still in the church, he emailed the mission president back and said that he would like to know where his son was. Because now what's getting lost on this, because it's not spelled out in the emails, but he told me this on the phone, his son had just arrived to the mission, like a day or two before all this, apparently. And they didn't even know what area he had been assigned to. So they didn't even know where he was in Houston. So he said, I'd like to know where my son is and how I can contact him. And the mission president emailed him back, didn't tell him where his son was, but said that he was in a part of Houston that was likely not going to get hit with the worst of the storm. And he went on to say that he should be proud of his son because he's loving his mission and is, it was this really weird, really culty type of an email, like a Baghdad Bob type, everything is good, no problems here, go about your business. And then he emails back saying, no, you don't understand. This is not, you don't know my son, you don't know my needs. All I want to do is talk to him and let him know that if he needs to call, he went on this whole big thing. Now he ended that email by saying, don't be an asshole. Okay.
To the mission president.
So he didn't do himself any favors.
Right.
I don't remember how many back and forth there were. At some point, the mission president said he wasn't going to give him the phone number, that it was against the rules or something. So he wasn't, wasn't getting the response. So we published it, and we left the mission president's name unredacted, and his name unredacted. And we were able to publish this right as Harvey was happening. So we were publishing this basically in real time. In fact, I think we published it within 12 or 15 hours of the last email. So it was very fresh news, and it made a lot of rounds online. And I actually got contacted by a friend of mine who I've met through the ex-Mormon community, who lives in Houston. And she said, listen, find out where he's at. And I said, well, I don't know where he's at. And she actually made some phone calls because she knew a lot of missionaries or whatever. She actually found him. And it turns out he was having dinner at that moment with a friend of hers who was a member. So she called that house and talked to the missionary and said, hey, listen, your dad's trying to get a hold of you. And he went online, trying to look for help, and it's going viral and all this stuff. And apparently the missionary said that he didn't want to call his dad because he was afraid of breaking the rules. Oh, wow. And so, she calls me back, and we couldn't believe it. So, we could not believe this. Anyway, I gave her phone number.
I can.
I guess so. I guess
Ex-Mormon dad.
Yeah. That's
so
true.
we were talking. Yeah, we were talking TBM Whisperer. I can totally empathize.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe I'm not giving enough credit. But
absolutely.
So I gave the dad,
and he just is off the MTC, man.
Yeah.
He's as primed as to make that move as ever.
So I gave the
Protected, man.
I gave the dad my friend's phone number, and I know that they were able to connect. And she told him that she would keep tabs on him and let him know what was going on. And he was in an area that was not very likely to get a lot of damage. And I don't know if it ended up getting damaged or not. And I don't know if he ended up being able to speak to his son or not. But, one of the things that reminded me of, and I may have spoken about this in another interview.
Ethan, did you say he did?
No, I don't know if he did or not.
Yeah. The dad went on Mormon Stories with John DeLynn, and he said on there that he was able to talk to his son.
Okay. Was he able to? Okay. So, and that's actually a great Mormon Stories episode. If anybody wants to catch it, it's only like 20 minutes long, and it was really powerful. It's one of the rare short ones. but listen, it reminded me of an experience I had, not as dramatic, but I was on my mission during 9/11, and
Ryan, can you guys?
Nope.
Can't hear you,
Ryan.
We can see you. Your video's coming through, but no audio.
Yeah.
and he could obviously hear us.
Take the router back.
Can you hear us?
Take the router. This is this the most technical difficulties you guys have ever had?
Oh, we've had some horrendous.
This is the worst with Zoom so far. Zoom is a lot more stable than Skype. How about that? It's better.
It's coming through distant, like it's a different mic.
I unplugged it's something with my snowball.
Oh, yeah.
So down below, you should be able to see where it says video, and there's an area, or there's an arrow rather. Click on that and make sure it's on the right. Plug your snowball back in and see if that's got it.
It's weird because it was working.
Okay. How about now? Can you hear me?
Yep.
That's way better.
All right. So
when you were a lonely missionary on 9/11.
Yeah, and even though there was email back then, my mission had a strict ban on email. We did not use email to communicate with our families, and I think a lot of missions were like that back then.
Mm-hmm.
Email was still pretty new and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we only communicate with our families through written letter and all this. And when 9/11 happened, it was chaos among us because none of us had access to newspapers or television. All we knew was what other members were telling us. And to be perfectly honest with you, looking back on it, they were, if this is even possible, if you can believe this, they were blowing things out of proportion. I had members telling me that the U.S. Capitol had been bombed and that the U.S. had announced that they were about to start World War III. I mean,
wow,
it was craziness. And I specifically remember having at district meetings talking with the missionaries about how, what if World War III starts and we get stranded here in Spain for 5 years and can't leave the country and all this stuff? My point being is we were told when it first happened, we had all these curfew changes and all this stuff, these rules changes to keep us safe and everything during time of uncertainty. But we were specifically told not to call our parents, and that if our parents needed to get us any information, that they would go through the office. And it would have probably been nice. I mean, I didn't really care at the time. It was no big deal for me, but I mean, it probably would have been nice to calm us down a little bit if we could have talked to our parents, once a week and gotten an update on what the status was over there stateside. And it could have saved us a lot of grief. I mean, we really were paranoid for probably a month or two.
Yeah.
More than we probably.
It's been highlighting something that's been in my mind lately, and it highlights that how important that lack of connection to a family and communication with a family is from the church's perspective, for a mission. I mean, it's critical to whatever they're accomplishing. And I think what they're accomplishing is insufficient indoctrination and brainwashing, as it were. But and I say that as don't shake your head, Tom. What would you call it?
Not brainwashing. I don't know. Brainwashing is a very negative term. That's why
but if anything is the mission, the MTC and mission experience is as close to, formal programming, right?
Very cult-like, dude.
Yeah.
If the church is a cult, the mission is 100% a cult. More.
Right.
We had a leak about this. It was an early leak, but I think it was after. I believe it was after our last interview with you, and it was a memo written by Ethan. Do you remember? Was it Boyd K. Packer that wrote the memo?
Yeah, it was Packer.
And it was a memo written to mission presidents and area authorities, and it was it was actually during my mission. Although I don't remember this rule necessarily coming out, so I think my mission president ignored the memo. but I think it was written in like 2000, and it was telling mission presidents to tell the missionaries that their calls home need to be limited to 5 minutes.
You mean the 2 calls that you get
Yes. And here's the thing. He specifically says in the memo, this is the best part about it, that the reason why is because the calls are too distracting to the missionary work.
Oh my God.
And then he goes on to say, but tell the family members that the reason we're doing it is to save them money for the long distance call.
Because that hasn't improved.
Right. Yeah. Well, and back then it was phone call.
Spendy.
It wasn't a free call, but still, he didn't want the mission presidents to say that it was because it was being distracting. But the thing is, and it just goes against common sense, and it's like it comes off as them trying to exert unrighteous dominion because, like, okay, 2 calls a year. What if it was a 3-hour phone call? I mean, does it really matter? Like, does it really matter? I mean, and then when you talk about natural disasters, like if we want to say, okay, the church has a right to have these rules and they agree to it and all this stuff, but can't we suspend the rules in a time of natural disaster or terrorist acts and say, okay, for the next week, there are no rules about talking to your family. Go ahead and it's a freebie this week.
It's the same with medical conditions, right? Those are exceptions that usually, maybe not always, I'm sure there are stories about it, but where they need to consult with the family and talk to them about, hey, I'm getting surgery or I'm doing this or whatever. Anything where it has to do with the life, limb, eyesight, or health of the missionary, let's go ahead and let them communicate with kids. Let's call
and not to go on too much of a tangent, I won't dive deep into this unless you guys want to, but you have the issue of when people's parents die and how they handle that. My wife's mother died while she was on her mission, and it was not a pretty story.
Your wife's mother, did you say? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that as a.
Well, I mean, I can tell the story, and maybe if you guys want to cut it out for time or whatever, I don't know. But I mean, we served in the same mission. A lot of people know that. I've said it before, but some people don't know that. And this happened.
Sinner.
Yes, well, it's funny because I used to. There's a ton of couples that came out of our mission, and I used to really judge them. And I used to say, I'm never going to marry somebody older than me, taller than me, or that I met on my mission. And I did all 3 of those.
Yep. Once you say.
But look, this happened while I was on my mission. But I
always like this though because Bob still has this hang up over that.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that in
our
I think there were some couples that came out of our mission that had things going on during the mission. I can tell you that in our case it was absolutely nothing. But I mean, I guess people don't believe that.
Too bad, Ryan.
Literally everybody says that, Ryan.
But anyway, her mom died while I was there, but we hadn't met yet. It was before I had met her. And I had heard about some missionary whose mom died.
Yeah.
But
how long was she out when her mother passed?
I think I want to say about 6 months. And her mom was young.
And I'm sorry, I recognize by asking that question, that's such a Mormon question because it matters. The only question should be like, holy hell, how quickly did they get her home? That should be the reaction.
Well, yeah, right. And so, like, I think she was out about 6 months. And the thing about my wife is that she is, when we were active members, she was the spiritual rock. I mean, I don't say that like a lot of people will just say that just to say it. I mean, my wife was the backbone of our testimony of the church. She's always been very spiritual. She's always had a super strong testimony in tithing and in every aspect of the church. So that's the kind of missionary she was too. She was an extremely hardworking missionary and very dedicated. Now she's from Spain. So we're in Barcelona. She's from southern Spain, although her mother is diagnosed with cancer and moves up to Madrid to be, I guess, near the better doctors and lives with her sister there in Madrid. Now, this is a 4-hour train ride away from where she's at in the mission. So she gets word her mother was diagnosed late. So basically, by the time she got diagnosed with cancer, there was no treatment. And she was basically given a matter of months to live. And I think it ended up only being a couple of weeks that she lived. But she was given permission to call her mom anytime she wanted. And she basically talked to her mom on the phone every day. She's very close to her mother. And it got to a point where they had to put her in the hospital. And the doctors basically said, you're going to die any day now. We're just literally waiting for it to happen. So she went in and met with the mission president. Now, I'm retelling this story, obviously, that my wife has told me several times. So take that for what it's worth. But I do feel like I'm accurately representing what she says. And the mission president, who was in the first quorum of the 70 now, by the way, he told her that if she wants to go home and to be with her mother, that she can, but that she should pray about it and should consider whether or not it's the right thing to do, and maybe it's better to remember her mother in whatever positive light or whatever the case, whatever justification he said that she should pray about it. So my wife, I'm telling you, people that don't know her need to understand that she was 120% in on the church and the mission. Okay. And she was black and white. There was no doubt the church was true. Her family was one of the original members in Spain. I mean, they were like a pioneer family there and all this kind of stuff. So she went home, prayed about it, and somehow got this, this Holy Ghost, I guess, told her that she was supposed to not go see her mother. And the way that she ultimately got over that grief was finding solace in the teaching that she would see her mother again, in the celestial kingdom. So fast forward to I'm starting to have these doubts about the church. This is now, 15 years after her mother dies or whatever, however many years it was. And, she still at that point still would cry on the anniversary of her mother's death and all this kind of thing. And I start showing her things that she can't dispute, and she realizes there's issues with the church and she's having doubts, but of course she's got this connection to her mom. And she had this feeling like, I can't leave the church, because if I leave the church, I won't be able to believe that I'll see my mom again one day. And I would try to, even though I basically become an atheist, I would actually encourage her to believe in God, because I would tell her, you don't have to be a Mormon to believe that you're going to see your mom again one day. Mm-hmm. Anyway, what it all boils down to, though, now is that she now carries a massive amount of guilt about not having gone to see her mom. Yeah. And it induces tears much more frequently than it should. And when I'm telling people about this, I always just say, look, if somebody goes in like that, he should have had the train ticket bought already and said, come back whenever you want. And if whenever is never, that's fine too. It shouldn't even be something you pray about. Right. But it's all revolves around this control and conditioning that you get on your mission. And it all plays into that.
Well,
Quick
I can
on that is I got hospitalized while I was on my mission for appendicitis, and my mission president came and saw me, and I remember thinking, well, my mom's going to be really worried about me, but don't call her, don't let her know, because I got to keep my head in the game out here. Because you're totally right. It's like if I don't stay focused on the Lord's work, then I'm going to not get those converts or missionary discussions out there. And you're right that you have to take the decision away from the missionary, because that's the way they're programmed. That's where their head is at. And if your wife really was in the church and in the missionary work as you claim she was, then there was no other option. Her mother at that point in her life was almost secondary. That's sad.
It's I can just second. We had a kid, his mother and sister died just in a car accident, and it was just, obviously the same thing. He had about 6 months left, and now the decision is yours. This is an option, and it was kind of those same encouragements that you were talking about, Ryan, which makes it less of a choice, really. And mm-hmm. That's too bad, man. It just breaks my heart.
Yeah, I had a mission companion that got hit by a car. While we were companions, I was standing right next to him. It wasn't like he didn't no broken bones or anything, or the damage wasn't super bad. But I remember looking at him, and it was just no question. I'm not going to tell my parents about this, right? And that's nothing compared to the stories that you guys just shared, but it illustrates that mentality is there.
Yeah. Well, and I've been highlighting it, it's been a focus of mine recently as I send my kid off to college, and we're now experiencing having a kid that's not living in the house or in town. And he's mission age. All my other nephews and are going on missions and whatnot. And it's just been, I'm just very angry and frustrated at what I went through and what all these kids go through, because I get the chance now to talk to my kid every day. We snap, we do text messages. I've embraced the way the kids do things, with the Snapchatting, so that I can stay connected with my kids that way. And I get to learn and I get a transition from parent to friend to, a little bit more as we're releasing both control and decision making and all those things, but can maintain it. It's a great thing to get to know him now as an adult. And you rob parents and kids of the opportunity to do that in a mission setting where they go off, and it's like the Back to the Future timeline just shifts, right? And people continue on, and that person's out of your life for 2 years and then becomes a completely different person 2 years later, and bam, back into your life. And it's just, I feel real lost from just that. The same, as I'm now experiencing as a dad, and very grateful to, as I tell my son every day, you're welcome. You're welcome. We left. But anyway, yeah, missions, man.
Hey, speaking of that, Ethan, did you serve? Did you go? Where did you go if you did?
Yeah, I went to the Guatemala City Central Mission.
Nice.
Yep.
So, Ryan, you're blogging? What are the projects you've got? Are you actually fulfilling them, or are these just pipe dreams?
Yeah, I mean, I've got this documentary / docudrama I'm trying to kickstart, but it's, a really slow process, and I don't know if anything will come out about that.
What about the Spanish? I thought you were doing a Spanish-speaking podcast.
Okay, so yeah, and I have some episodes up on that. I've got some really good episodes up. I've got more people to interview. It's really hard to find somebody in these countries that has an adequate internet connection to be able to record.
So real quick, talk about the what it is and what you're hoping to accomplish.
Okay, it's called Mormones Libres, which is sort of free Mormons, and it's kind of just, hey, let's talk about your story. I suppose it's similar to a Mormon Stories out format, but it's not as long. I mean, I try to keep them to about an hour, no. But here's the thing. It's kind of morphed, though. The project is kind of morphed. There is a very popular Spanish podcast out there called Pesquisas Mormonas. And it's a guy named Manuel.
The Mormon fish. I'm just kidding.
No. Pesquisas is like is deposition, actually. It's a legal word.
Oh.
So it's like it's used for like deep investigation, if you will. But the literal translation is like a legal deposition. Okay. And so he does these great podcasts. The name.
That's great.
Yeah, he does these really great podcasts where he dissects history and current events. And I was doing like a Mormon Leaks Minute on his thing where I would come on once or twice a month and Spanish and all this stuff. Well, he's kind of reached sort of a burnout spot. I mean, he's been doing this for years, and he was actually going to shut down the podcast. And I said, don't shut the podcast down, because I knew he had outlines for hundreds more episodes, like literally over 100 outlines he still has. And so I'm actually going to sort of take over the hosting. Me and somebody else, we're going to kind of split it. I've already published one episode under, where I hosted under his umbrella of Pesquisas, and we're probably going to incorporate, as I get these interviews of people, these sort of regular Joe interviews of people in South and Central America, we're going to incorporate that into just episodes of Pesquisas Mormonas, where we are talking to just a regular Joe. So, I like I said, if you go to the Pesquisas Mormonas YouTube page, I think there has been a recent one of the other guy that's going to host, but if the second most recent one is the first episode where I'm actually the host and I do the whole show myself in Spanish. So I really think that there's
this is a dedicated Spanish.
Oh yeah, it's only in Spanish. Although the guy that started it, he lives in Salt Lake City, but he's Argentinian, and he has huge viewership. Huge. I don't know his exact numbers, but I believe his Facebook group has over like 5,000 people in it or something. He's got thousands of dedicated followers, and I think even more people that just download and listen to the podcast. And it's, the thing is that nobody's really been able to, other than him, has really been able to tap in to that market. And when I say market, I just mean of being able to disseminate information. It's not like a moneymaker. I don't think he makes money off of it, and I'm not. there are people in South America that are salivating for content that we sometimes take for granted here stateside. And so we're trying to put a dent into that. And I think we've done a pretty good job. He's done a great job, and I think I've assisted in that. And it's only growing. And that is really, it'll be interesting to see if they have an apostasy situation like what's happening over the last 10 years here in the United States. It'd be interesting to see how the church adjusts because they've been able to still control the narrative down there so far.
That's a very cool, ambitious project, man.
I have, and another project that I don't think we're really ready to talk about, and I don't really want to give a lot of details, but I'll just say that Ethan and I.
Well, then what are you doing, man?
Well, I'm not going to give details, so it'll be like, hey, you guys can have us on for again someday for this. But I'll just say that Ethan and I are working on a new project that we're hoping to launch in the next month or two. And I don't. It's not a strictly Mormon project, but it is related, and like I said, I don't want to get into the details, but I'll just say stay tuned. And we're probably going to take a break after this conference week. We're going to be having leaks every day of the week. And then we're probably going to take about a month off or so of leaking. I mean, we'll still be interacting with people and whatnot, but we probably won't have leaks for about a month so that we can focus on this new project and get it launched. So we're excited about that and what the potential is.
All right,
there.
come on, give us a little bit more.
I'm
What genre?
No, I'm not going to give
Podcast,
any.
book.
No hits. No, it's not. It's an extension of Mormon leaks. It's an extension of the idea behind Mormon leaks, but it's a bigger vision and it covers more aspects. And I don't even want to say more than that.
That's great.
It's going to be. We're excited about it.
Well, then let's give Ethan the floor. Tell us about the My Mormon Experience podcast.
Okay.
He can say what he wants. He can say whatever he wants.
Yeah, so the My Mormon Experience podcast was, or blog series or whatever you want to call it. I got the idea because I work in tech, so I work for San Francisco company, and I have for a while now for various San Francisco companies. And all of my coworkers that don't know anything about the church are always super fascinated to hear about my upbringing and also about my exit story, getting out of the church. Like literally, like it got to the point where I was holding lunchtime discussions and like inviting the whole company, and over half the company would show up. Right? Like, okay, that's an exaggeration, but it was standing room only, and we'd have a couple dozen people there, and it was a tiny startup. So anyway. And they were just fascinated with it. I'd get tons of questions, and I was like, there's obviously some demand for this among Never Mo's. And so that's what inspired it. And that's the idea is I'm going to be telling my story, also laying the foundation for like what they need to understand about rituals and doctrine and stuff like that to understand the implications. And then Tom, you said that you've listened to a little bit of it. The past few episodes, I've talked a lot about, the culture of comparison that the church promotes, that like I grew up constantly comparing myself to other kids my age, especially at my high school, all the other young men in my ward, and trying to like be more spiritual or like be better and it totally climaxed on my mission when there were 300 of us competing for the attention of one mission president, right? And it's just the competition and everything there is so toxic and potentially traumatic that and to be honest with you, it's that stuff that I've been working on with my therapist most of the time since I've left the church, is kicking that mentality of comparing myself to others and just being me, right? So,
and how many episodes do you have up?
Tomorrow I'll be publishing the 7th. Okay,
and that's what's the website?
It's called My Mormon Experience, and it's on my personal blog, which is EGD, Ethan Gregory Dodge, egd.io/my-mormon-experience. Or if you go to mymormonexperience.com, it'll redirect you to there.
All right, cool. Well, we'll have you on to maybe talk about your other project here. Maybe we should do this regularly to keep me updated with the leaks that are coming out, because I'm not consuming. I'm apparently not consuming it in whatever format it's getting out there. So
well,
this is helpful.
We would definitely love to do that anytime you guys want to extend the invite. But I'd say pay attention this week. I mean, we obviously don't have anything that's going to bring the church down. I don't want anybody to think that. But I think we have some exciting leaks that are going to get talked about and are going to be worth at least some smackdowns or whatever it is, whatever different formats you guys do. I think they'll play right into it. So I'd say if you don't normally pay attention this week to the leaks.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
And no, we're not going to burn the church down.
Look at that.
Week.
Click. No, that's great. All right.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Now all the TBMs, Ryan, are saying that there's going to be some big leak.
Somebody's going to say I disappointed them. Yeah, somebody's going to say I disappointed them. I oversold it.
That is one of my biggest beefs is people, and this is probably on us. Maybe our branding is just off, that people don't understand. We've never claimed that there's one big leak. We've never claimed that we're going to bring the church down. That's not our intention, by the way, to bring the church down, right? Our intention is to increase transparency and decrease corruption. But when people get really upset with us for not providing commentary or that the leaks are underwhelming, it's just like, we've never said that we're going to provide commentary, and we've never said that we're going to come out with a huge ass leak.
Right.
So
and some of these I think some people's perception of how evil the church is skewed.
It's skewed.
Yes.
And I think that
Totally.
their expectations will never be met absent they can get video of, Gordon B. Hinckley in a satanic mask sitting in there saying, "I got you, motherfuckers." Or something. I mean, it's like,
the church is not, I think we've even talked about this before on your podcast. The church is not engaged. It's very unlikely that they're engaged in systematic illegal behavior.
Right.
It's not to say that they've never done anything illegal, because mistakes get made, and sometimes honest mistakes can be illegal mistakes sometimes when you're dealing with large corporations. But the idea that there is a systematic illegal activity going on that's not only known but endorsed by the higher ups, I just think, while I suppose it's possible, I think it's highly unlikely, and I would be the most shocked of anybody to receive any kind of proof of that. I think what you mostly have where the church is open for criticism is just in the unethical behavior that they engage in, which is not the same as illegal behavior, and just sort of their lack of transparency and the way that they treat missionaries and the way that they treat their members and the leadership roulette and saying one thing in public and another thing in private meetings. Those are the types of things that are not,
it's a friend of mine used to say, and this happened with the leak that we talked about, in January, of, well, the church is no worse than any corporation or any business.
Sure.
And that's true. As my friend used to point out, that's not the problem. The problem is they are no better. And people expect them to behave like truly a religious institution until they don't. And then everybody's fine. Well, I say everybody, members are going to be fine with them behaving like any old institution and not one that is what they say they are. And that's ultimately the conflict.
Mormons want you to believe that the church is a religion that dabbles in business, when in reality they're a business that dabbles in religion.
Absolutely.
And that's something that we would love to shed more light on, but that's not illegal.
Well, and not unlike the Joel Osteen stuff, and I know, Ryan, I think my memory is you had some strong opinions about that as well, and just the prosperity doctrine stuff and all those. I think those same criticisms are appropriate as it relates to the church. But if you're looking for a smoking gun that is something more than that, it ain't out there, man.
Not. I completely agree.
Yeah. Man, as with relationships, right? And anyone you date, it's just manage expectations, right? Never.
Yeah. I think the one exception, if there is something, and I'm not saying that there is, but if there is going to be a smoking gun or something that, really, really causes, let's say, an active Mormon to take a step back and reevaluate things, I think there is potential for that to exist in the realm of how the church handles sexual abuse. If some sort of a document, and I'm not saying this document exists, but if I were to receive a document that showed, let's say, knowledge of from an apostle and sort of trying to quiet a situation, avoid it from making it to the press, and they were like actively involved in doing that. I do think something like that would probably shock active Mormons. But not only do I not know it exists, they might be doing it in a way that's not actually illegal. I mean, because corporations are allowed to settle lawsuits against them involving accusations of sexual abuse. So
it's a great point. And what I fear in that situation, the response is just going to be to attack the victim. That's the easiest and the most likely response, and that will have legs. But anyway.
So if on that note, if it's okay, I do kind of want to highlight that we have been able to accomplish significant, not obviously not total, but significant transparency in the terms of finances, right? Like we leaked the pay stubs. We know that the general authorities are getting a base stipend of $120K, and that includes the first and second quorum of the 70s and the quorum of the 12 apostles and first presidency. We also leaked a memo detailing their child allowance that they get depending on the number of children that they have in their home. We've also
the credit cards,
that they're using points for personal travel and whatnot. In fact, my memory is failing me because I actually just went through all of our leaks just the other day, not the other day, a couple of weeks ago. And I remember I would come across something, I'd be like, oh yeah, I totally forgot we leaked this. And it was like some significant financial, the finances for the PCC, right? The Polynesian Cultural Center. That was important. Anyway, it's been a lot of fun. And like I said, I'm proud of what we've been able to do.
Cool. Well, continue to do not the Lord's work, guys. All right, I'm gonna stop recording.